Can a bird sing only the song it knows, or can it learn a new one? And welcome to Alice's Shelf, the Curious Room. So, guys, today is a good day. We'll start talking about the Curious Room, which is an ensemble of all of Angela Carter's dramatic literature. And we'll start with radio plays. The first radio play we'll be analyzing is called Vampirella, and it's about vampires from a feminist perspective. So, what we do first? Yes, let's look at the plot. The plot of Vampirella involves this castle in which a countess lives, and she lives with a woman who helps her, Mrs. Bean. And she feeds upon young men who are sent to her castle by the village nearby, riding a virgin horse. We'll talk about that. And then what happens is that this man is traveling around this place and he falls from his bicycle, and the countess's servants come for him and bring him to the castle. He talks to them, to the countess and everything, and a cat comes and scratches him. As soon as that happens, the countess flies to him and starts sucking on his blood. From that moment on, he is supposed to be there for all time until he dies, so that she can go to him and suck on his blood every night. However, what happens is that the countess is embraced by the boy, and right after that, he goes to sleep and she never wakes up again. He finds himself holding a white lace negligee with a small pint of blood, as if from a woman's menses. So let's talk about the meaning of it. Okay, so the story starts with this quote: "Can a bird sing only the song it knows, or can it learn a new one?" So the vampire has been living in the same way for centuries, the same way her family always has. And it's a beautiful quote. Angela Carter says that her ancestors were all victims of the most horrible passion. Oh, look at that diction. Diction is word choice. So she's talking about being a vampire and sucking on people's blood, but she's saying that it's the most horrible passion. And the countess will say this time and again: it's a horrible existence. She hates being like that, but it's how she is and she can't change it. So what she says is, even the meanest fiend in hell shuns the company of my kind. I am compelled to the repetition of their crimes. I exist only as a compulsion. A compulsion. Look at how she denies her own existence. She's only a compulsion. And what do we know about Angela Carter? Angela Carter loves to use fairy tales and horror to talk about the role of women in society. And look at how our female character is put. She's only a compulsion of something that's not her fault. So that can be understood as the role of women in society as only a compulsion to what is expected from her from a male perspective. Let's move on. We have a very important image, which is the virginity. Female virgins are very common in a lot of stories. They're used as sacrifices, but that's not the virginity image we have in this tale. We actually have the image of two male virgins, because we are told that the people in the village, they send the countess's castle a young boy who's a pure maid, bareback on a stallion that has not mounted its first mare. So we already have an inversion of the role of the virgin person, now that we have virgin male characters working for the countess. And the countess believes that love may be able to rid her of her doom. So we have yet again the image of love as something very big for a woman. And apart from marriage, like we had on the Bloody Chamber, we have love as a source of freedom from this compulsion that is her existence. So what she believes is that, and I quote, one fine day, a virgin will ride up to the castle door and restore her to humanity with a kiss from his pure, pale lips. So we already know what love means in this story. Salvation. So let's talk about her salvation, the boy. The boy was riding his bicycle around the place, and then he falls off the bicycle, and then the servants come to pick him up. And this is a radio play, so everything is sad. And it is told that the servants are speaking an invented language with a lot of K's and T sounds. Look at that choice. They are both plosive consonant sounds, so they are strong. This gives a harshness to the speech of those servants. That's why they are not speaking in lust or in fuss. They're speaking cuss and cuss. What an interesting choice, Carter. The servants take him off to the castle, and it is said that the castle lights don't make him feel any better, don't comfort him. And everything's sad because he was being expected. And how does the countess introduce herself? She says, I am the lady of the castle. My name is Exile. My name is Anguish. I am both the Sleeping Beauty and the Enchanted Castle. We have a middle ground yet again. Remember that I told you about that on our Bloody Chamber video when she talks about the amphibious place? Now we have our countess set as both the cursed and the cursed. So she is bad, she's the cursed, she's the one who kills people, but she always suffers from it. Yet again, we have the woman in this fragile position in the middle ground of existence, which is where Carr frequently positions her women, understanding the role of womanhood in a patriarchal society. And the Countess is helped by Mrs. Bean, and Mrs. Bean's husband was executed because of necrophagy, which means eating dead people, which is kind of what vampires do, is it not? I mean, they only suck the blood of living beings, but... And, interesting thing, she talks to Mrs. Bean as if she was a child. So we have yet again a woman positioned in a role of innocence, and the servants look at her as a child. We can draw a parallel to the Bloody Chamber as the innocence prior to the sex or the consummation of a male role in her life. It's also important to notice that it's always cold. And that's a normal thing when we talk about vampires. We know that their skin is cold. And there's this beautiful quote in the play in which she says, "Could even Italian summers warm me when not all the fires of hell could do so?" Also, talking about this middle ground, we have the presence of shadows, a lot of shadow imagery, because she lives in chiaroscuro, which is the only place she can actually see, and she says it's an affliction of the eyes, something that has haunted her family for generations. But yet again, what is the shadow? The shadow is the middle ground between the light and the darkness. So yet we have her existing in a middle ground. And then there's the matter of her beauty. And her beauty is a problem because it's so excessive, it's a deformity. Look at this parallel, look at the quotes we have. Her beauty is a symptom of her disorder. There was about her not one of those touching little imperfections of the human condition. She is a masterpiece of appearance. She is far too fine, the imitation of a woman. She is so beautiful, it's pitiful. Oh, look at what a paradox she lives in. She's so beautiful, which is something that is usually seen as positive, but it is so excessive that it kills her humanity. After all, she is a monster, she is a vampire. And a very important trait of humanity is that we are not perfect. Her lack of imperfections only demonstrate what a monster she is. Beautiful, isn't it? And besides her coldness, there are also other very known symbols that come throughout the story, like silver bullets, pointed teeth, stick to the heart, Vlad the Impaler, who would have been like the inspiration to Dracula. And it's been centuries since her family has seen the sunshine. After all, she lives in Chiaroscuro. And her lack of power over her own nature is so strong that she says, I do not mean to hurt you. I do not want to cause you any pain, but I cannot help to seek assuage in you in my melancholy. See how she is the monster, but she's victimized? It's her nature, she can't fight it. We can think about the creature in Frankenstein and how the monster is usually portrayed as someone who's been through a lot of pain and who didn't at first want to cause any pain, but that's what they do. How sad. And this sadness is something that's so important to the play because she can't cry. The Count says that he ordered a beautiful gift for her, and when she got it, she did those little movements with her mouth that shows that she wanted to cry if only she knew how to. Her inability to cry is part of her lack of humanity, because people are imperfect and people cry, and she's unable to. She implied her own continuous disappearance, like a haunting. A woman is a lonely instrument. How I'm shaking. Unease. Disquiet. Fear? Yes, fear, but not yet quite terrified. So this is how the boy feels about her. He is wondering about how women are lonely instruments because she's secluded to her castle, and we had our protagonist in the bloody chamber abandoned by her husband in the castle. So if women are lonely instruments, are they by nature or have they been abandoned? Like Elizabeth in Frankenstein and the wife on the bloody chamber. And although he is scared, he is fearful of her presence, he's not yet terrified, because her monstrosity is also pitiful. So the cat scratches him, and she flies to him and starts sucking on his blood, and she's finally fully alive. So the consummation of her monstrosity is what brings her to life. Although she is in the middle ground, in the in-between, in this place between life and death. Or, as it said in the play, who's dead and yet not dead, whose bane is an insatiable thirst for life and yet an inability to live. So we're just emphasizing this motif of a middle ground, of her existence in the in-between. And she also says, I am I, yet not I, as if I haunted my own shape and am condemned to watch with rage and shame its beastly doings. Which is a beautiful way to say that she doesn't like being this monster. She's caught up inside this body that's thirsty for blood, and she has to watch her nature behave as it must, even though she doesn't want to. So if we think about the role of women in society and how they have to behave according to certain parameters, even though they might not want to, I mean, Everyone in society has to behave according to what is expected sometimes. And this is what she's putting in question. Sometimes everyone is trapped inside their bodies and has to live with rage and shame and do as it's expected. We then get a glimpse of other people who has lived through this curse. And it's very important that we have a character called Blood that he is defending necrophagy and necrophilia by saying that corpses don't nag and never want new dresses. They never waste all day at their hairdressers, not talk for hours to their girlfriends on the phone. So look at how we see that man sees women as an object of pleasure and that only. So if a woman has a lot to her other than sex, I might as well have sex with a corpse, because then I will get the pleasure I'm looking for and I won't have to handle all of women's and female existence. Finally, she's hugged by the man, and in his arms she feels warm for the first time. She's found love to free her salvation, which is concluded with her line, I existed only as a symbolic formula. I was a woman, young and beautiful. Look at how that means that Angela Carter is setting the idea of a young and beautiful woman as a formula. It is something that's expected, something that's prescribed. When the boy wakes up, he finds himself with a white lace negligee, a little soiled with blood, as it might be from a woman's menses. And she's dead. The breakaway point between her innocence, her childhood as she behaved with Mrs. Bean, and her menses, her femaleness, her womanhood, kills her. And when she's dead, all of her teeth disappear, and she's finally completely human. So after surrendering to love, she is a human, and she is dead. Pretty much what we had for our protagonist in the Bloody Chamber, isn't it? So this gives us an idea of how Angela Carter saw marriage and the communion between a man and a woman as somehow the death of her existence. And finally, we have Mrs. Bean's line, fly away, little bird, fly away. Remember how we started this video? Can a bird sing only the song it knows, or can it learn a new one? Apparently, she learned a new one. She learned love, and that destroyed her existence. Well, this was Vampirella by Angela Carter. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe, like, and share the video with everyone. Tell them you know this very gorgeous and sexy drag queen who talks about literature. I'll see you next week. We'll start a whole new month, and we'll talk a little about Nathaniel Hawthorne and the Scarlet Letter. Remember, life is a sin.